Live here. Hello everybody. Welcome to the final of our broadcast series looking at the psychological resilience of communities and how we support them using or through work with psychologists and psychotherapists in SLAM. So we're very lucky today. We're going to be talking to a team called Imagining Futures who work with adolescents and use theatre as a medium. Before we do that, I'd just like to thank everyone who's been part of this series, and some people I know have been following this series all the way through. We've had a whole range of speakers, and you'll probably be used to the etiquette by now, but if you have any questions for today's speakers, can you please put them in the chat in the question and answer, and I will try to read them out and ask the speakers for their views. We'd really encourage you to participate actively from the beginning with any thoughts you have, any questions. If you are involved in something similar, you might want to post a link to it or tell us about it so that we can link people up as a result of these broadcasts. The broadcasts have been very rich on a whole. We've seen a whole variety of community groups doing some really wonderful work promoting the mental health of our communities and working with SLAM and SLAM staff to do that. So I think we'll be bringing all of you together at the end. Anyone who's interested in taking part in a review of how these broadcasts have gone and what's worked and what hasn't worked and what we'd like to take forward, please put your name in the chat function, in the Q&A, and let us know how we can contact you if you'd like to be part of a review and any work going forward. But for now, let's turn to Imagining Futures and let's hear from our presenters, and I'll ask them each to introduce themselves in turn, and then we'll move on to hear more about what the project is. So first of all, Lindsay, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure, hopefully everybody can hear me all right. I'm Lindsay, I'm a clinical psychologist attached to South London and the Maudsley Hospital and an affiliate researcher at KCL. I'm the clinical lead from a psychology point of view on the project. And I'm also working with the At-Risk and Forensic National Specialist CAMHS service. So that's how I fit in with the project.
Thank you, Lindsay. And Vikki, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Vikki Moorhouse. I'm project manager of Imagining Futures. I work for Brixton House Theatre, so bring the experience of arts and participation management to the project.
Welcome, Vikki. And Georgia.
Hi, I'm Georgia Dodsworth. I'm the project assistant attached to Imagining Futures. I also work for Brixton House, so I support the young women to engage in with the arts, and I also manage a lot of their communications with the project.
That's absolutely lovely. So maybe we can start by asking you, Lindsay, you know, what is Imagining Futures, and can you tell us a bit about the history of it, where the idea came from, how it came to be?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So look, the project was an idea and a collaboration originally between Dr. Troy Trana, who is the head of the At-Risk and Forensic Service, a clinical psychologist and head of psychology for children within SLAM, and Brixton House and the artists at Brixton House. It's been supported throughout the proposal by Guy's and St Thomas's Charitable Trust, so they were the original funding body. We are a 2-year pilot exploratory project that's trying to blend psychology skills and professional arts practice in a series of workshops for young women aged 14 to 18 in Lambeth and Southwark. The idea and the ideology was about, look, we know that we only reach about 20% of young people in need within Lambeth and Southwark. And that for most people and many people, the sort of traditional setup of coming to an outpatient service or whatever other provision there is from mental health services point of view doesn't necessarily work. There are certain stigma and barriers to getting the psychology skills and other supports that people might need. So this was an idea about, could we bring the best of third sector arts community, embedded art centre, and the expertise and skills of a mental health service for young people, and come up with something that might be more appealable for some people, more adaptable and more accessible.
That sounds very innovative, and I'd love to hear more about it. But maybe I can ask Vikki, you know, what about the partnership from your point of view brings something new?
I think originally what Brixton House, who were then Oval House, in the project was that we have so many young people involved in arts, and lots of young people with very active and exciting minds and imaginations, and some trauma and some difficulty in their lives are drawn to the arts, and they want to take part in arts projects. But their mental health has been a barrier, their ill health and inequalities have been a barrier to them maintaining through longer term projects that really could affect some change in their lives. So that was the initial impetus for their involvement. And our involvement now is in how those functions of arts engagement, of participation, of working through an individual process and making that part of a team process works so well with that DBT partnership of what we would expect in a creative project. It often really does mirror what is expected in a DBT project, and so as artists and creatives we really try to draw that out and support each other's skills.
Could you tell us just a little bit about what you mean by DBT? I know that that's very familiar to those people who know, but to those people who don't know, it might be a little bit unfamiliar. So tell us about DBT and how that fits within a theatre setting. Vikki?
Well, I mean, obviously Lindsay can answer that much better than me as a DBT, you know, as a psychologist who practices DBT skills. But for us, I'll just very quickly say before I hand over to Lindsay, that our next module of Imagining Futures, because it's delivered in 3 modules, and the next module is a performance module. And the DBT skills we're looking at are relationships, and theatre and performance is all about those relationships. So you see a real symbiosis of the way that we would look at something in terms of how are you saying that, how are you hearing that, but Lindsay can attach DBT skills to give the young people that participate something they can learn from that. But I'm not an DBT expert, so I'm going to hand that bounce that over to Lindsay.
No, that's great though, Vikki. I mean, I think you've helped us to understand that this might be for young people who might be struggling with relationships, and that through the medium of theatre, that's something that you can address in quite a unique way that might be quite difficult in a clinical setting. But so Lindsay, can you tell us a little bit more about DBT and what you're seeking to address in that mode of therapy, and how the theatre works in that context? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, my floating bar was jumping up and down there. Yeah, absolutely. So I should perhaps say that it's actually a multi-arts project. So we do have theatre in there, but also photography, visual arts, jewellery making, movement, song. So there are multiple art forms in there. And really the innovation was that we sat down as a team at the outset in the development period, and we looked to blend what is an evidence-based skills set of skills and practices through dialectical behavioural therapy. I won't go into all of the details of that. It's Googleable. It's an established evidence-based therapy for young women, well, for young people at risk and for adults. It was originally developed to help people with suicidal behaviours and suicide attempts and high levels of self-harm. It has subsequently been adapted for lots of different groups, and there are adaptations for different needs. But so our innovation was that, as I say, we sat down and said, how can we blend these together? Vikki mentioned the relationships module. Some of the skills are about communication skills. We put that on its feet through theatre. Mindfulness is something that is practice is part of all of the modules. It might be through movement, though it might be through different arts practices. We cover core skills for emotion regulation. It just might be that each session, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another example that might be right. We look at emotional sensitivity and teaching around peaks and troughs of emotion, but we map that on sometimes to music and how we can move in waves of music. Yeah, there's a lot of detail in the actual innovations, but it follows the evidence-based skills modules, which are about managing emotions, managing relationships, and managing distress or very sort of distressing or crisis situations. And yeah, the detail is in what's in the workshop and the mapping on of those things.
So through those very, very much more expressive forms, people are helped to manage their emotions, to cope with distress, to manage their relationships better. And I can certainly see how that would be much more versatile than in some of the clinic settings that we have, you know, in our outpatient settings, for example. So that sounds interesting. Georgia, I wonder if I could bring you in at this point and ask you a little bit about the young people who use this project. Could you tell us a little bit about, you know, what might bring a young person to this project that would make this multi media approach, you know, so attractive to them, or why that might be more appealing than say, you know, a clinic-based intervention?
So our young women come from the boroughs of Lambeth and Southwark, and we're from a very diverse group. A lot of them have maybe struggled at school, or struggled in the mental health system, or they might not be engaging with the mental health system. So our project really wants to be that kind of multi-arts project that can attract them all. And I guess we spent a lot of time recruiting and with our marketing as well, trying to get these young women, and where are they engaging at? How can we reach them? So we've made it really attractive, I guess, with all the different art forms. As Lindsay mentioned, we do jewelry making, drama, we have song in there. And it's really important that these young women have a group where they can feel like that they have the community, because a lot of these young women have been just on the outskirts of society for whatever reason, or receiving stigma to do with their mental health. So our group wants to be there for them to have that safe, supportive space, where they can also make friends and also experiment and also learn these valuable DBT skills. Also, access is really important to us too. We believe that everybody should be included, no matter where they come from in life. So we'll do anything to help these young women engage in the project. So if they need transport, we have a fund where they can access taxis, or at the start of each session, we also order pizza, because we believe that nobody should learn or work on an empty stomach. So we want to just make our project as kind of engaging as possible, so that these young women just feel like they have a place to go to, and they have a place where they're accepted, and where they're valued, and where they can thrive.
And I'm wondering, and I love the pizza idea. I think that just ought to be a mantra really for everything that we do. But I'm wondering if you if this is particularly important with the client group that you're working with. Are these people who might otherwise be coming with an empty stomach? Are these people who might otherwise not have the means to get here by transport, either because they are too you know, impoverished, or because they come from the kinds of backgrounds where that maybe they would be frightened to do that work on their own? Can you say a little bit about the backgrounds of the people who use the project? With Georgia?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll hand over to Lindsay. All of our young women come from different backgrounds, but a lot of them do come from quite large families as well. A lot of the young women do feel anxious about travelling, or some of them might have issues at the moment with eating because of their mental health issues too. And also just the cost of travel, or the cost of food. Some people can't afford to have 3 meals a day, so they might just have that one meal or something. So we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help these young women get there. We don't want it to be a barrier. Oh, I can't come this week because I can't afford travel, or I can't come this week because I haven't eaten anything. We want to do everything that we can so these young women can get there and be in the room and feel like they can function and they can listen and learn. So whatever barriers that these young people face, we want to just remove them and just do everything we can. But I'm sure Lindsay can say some more on the specifics.
Lindsay?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So the project was set up with a couple of things in mind. Firstly, it's deliberately adiagnostic or transdiagnostic. So it was about trying to make this people that are struggling with risk of self-harm or previous suicidal incidents, emotional distress and social exclusion, whatever the other factors might be, can apply. A second factor was as an inclusion criteria that people were not already engaged with another dedicated psychology service for the difficulties that they were facing. I think that does mean we have quite a diverse group. There are realistic limitations to that still. So, for example, I think some of the young people who are most in need, we would require greater resource to do more systemic working and be able to work with social care and some of the other partners that are there at the moment, because this is a pilot and a project. We don't necessarily have that in place, and there are higher levels of communication needs that are, just the reality of taking part in a two-hour workshop is probably don't take part. But yes, I think that sets out the stall of what we hope to achieve and the kind of diversity within our group.
I'm wondering also if this could apply, and we have a question from the audience about this, does this really need to be just for adolescents? Couldn't this apply across the age range? Are there not people who, would this not be equally applicable for people with learning disabilities or people, with all sorts of,
Absolutely.
from all sorts of different backgrounds?
Absolutely. And we were hoping to pilot some sort of protocol and come up with a learning resource and learning that we can share and disseminate that could be adapted by other people in other disciplines and other groups looking at other communities. It was set up off the back of figures in sort of 2016, 2017 that were showing quite a worrying rise of self-harming incidents and admissions for self-harm in young women in the borough. So we are specifically set up with a borough-led need in mind. But our hope from the project and the next steps are about dissemination of learning and thinking about how that might be transferable to different communities. Absolutely.
And it would be great if there were people from the audience who perhaps wanted to link with you on that, because I should imagine that there are an awful lot of theatre groups and dance groups and music groups and all sorts of organisations with different sorts of charitable funding and links who might be quite keen on taking this sort of thing forward. And we've also had a question about somebody wanting to see the artwork that the young people in the project have created, and if you could advise of anywhere where that would be available. So maybe Vikki, is that a question for you?
Such a well-timed question. Once we've finished on with this broadcast, we're going to go down to a local theatre. Brixton House Theatre is actually being built at the moment, so we're using and we've built another partnership in Theatre Peckham, which is actually really lovely because it's very near to a school that a lot of the young people go to. We've got an exhibition in the foyer. Obviously London is in tier 3 now, so we're running this exhibition with under sort of like quite challenging circumstances, but we've got all the guidelines in place. What's been lovely is the exhibition is street facing, so that people can walk past and see it. It's some of the photographic work, because the first module was visual arts. Each module will has a different theme. So that was visual arts, so there's lots of photography in there, and it's just so it'd be lovely. We'll put some of that online. We'll link to some of that through the Brixton House and through the Imagining Futures NHS Slam web pages, but and through social media. But what for us, it'd be lovely if colleagues and from around the country can see that online. But for us, inviting these young people's families down tonight to see their work in an exhibition catalogue, to say congratulations, to say well done, to say what a huge achievement it is for them to stay with something that's a 10-week term through lockdown, through the change in tiers, etc., etc. It's a massive achievement, and it's lovely to share that work.
Thanks, Vikki. I'm also wondering a bit about how people access this service, a little bit about how do people come to you? How are you, during a pandemic particularly, how do you get the message out there?
Well,
Vikki, please.
I'll start, and then we did much. I mean, it was really difficult timing for as with a lot of people, but we did lots of recruitment at the early part of the year. We were ready to go. We had a core group of 24 young people ready to go, and then lockdown happened the following week. So luckily through the team and predominantly through Georgia, constant comms, constant calling, not constant calling, but regular contact. And we did think, like, one of the things that we've been quite keen with this project, as well as the pizzas and that kind of thing, is quality art material support. So we sent art materials out to people. We got their sketchpad to them during lockdown. We sent out pens and stickers. So we really wanted them to feel there was a sense of what was to come. We didn't want to lose them. And I think that is one of our achievements, as well as a team and led by Georgia, that we managed to hold those comms, and Lindsay holding those mental health comms during that awful period of lockdown. I'll hand over now.
Yeah, go ahead, Georgia.
I was also going to mention about the Instagram account as well, as a lot of these young people are on social media. So I set up a private Instagram account just for the young women, so they can share artwork, and that we can also share like the visual DBT skills. So it's super accessible for them. So we're not kind of giving them loads of paper and loads of information. They can look at it in their own time. We set that up in lockdown. So throughout lockdown, they were sending us pictures of their artwork from the art materials we sent out. And I think it was really nice for them to just have that kind of online resource where they could see each other's work and also feel celebrated for us posting it, and for everybody to kind of just have that kind of peer resource where everyone can learn together. So yeah, that private Instagram group is still running, and I think it's a really good resource that we've set up as well.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yeah, absolutely. So the social media was a part of it. Really wanted to bring innovations to that. We wanted to broaden applications by having self-application routes. We reached out via flyers and communications to schools, social services, third sector organisations. We were in schools doing assemblies. Our sort of applications split down into about 40% coming through CAMHS, so people sitting on wait lists or unable to engage or being discharged but with further needs. About a quarter schools, 20% social services, and 15% either direct routes or through third sector. But we really, in terms of how do you get in touch, we wanted to broaden the applications to be able to get our reach out.
And Bruce has asked, what about the opportunities for researching this? It's an exciting, innovative project. How are you going to establish whether it's as effective in managing, in helping people to manage some of those distress, tolerating distress and managing relationships and regulating their emotions? How are you going to demonstrate that it's as effective, or potentially even more effective than as clinic-based interventions?
Yeah, so it is a fully, the project as part of the 2-year funded trial is a pilot evaluation, and so it's a mixed methods evaluation with an independent research partner. We do have both quantitative measures that are being completed at the start and at the end of treatment, and a small portion of follow-up from the first year that are looking at factors that we know are impacted by arts interventions and also by DBT skills, so confidence, social support. We're also measuring rates of self-harm. We have, as I say, it's mixed methods. We're conducting focus groups with the young people at the end of the sessions, with parents and with referrers, and we're really hoping to have enough data to look at whether this is having some kind of impact. Although it is worth acknowledging that because it's a complex exploratory project, there will be some limitations there in reality about the rigour, and we would like to think about building on that in the longer term.
So tell us a little bit about the involvement of parents, Lindsay. You've mentioned parents just now, and I'm just wondering how do you get the wider network involved in this project? Are there options for that?
I might pass it over to Vikki because she's done quite a lot of the work with parents. We've realised in the first year that was really vitally important in terms of being able to support over the longer term through the whole project, but I'll hand that over to
Yeah, as Lindsay said, it made all that we noticed a direct correlation in year 1 of the young people's parents that were quite involved and had positive comms. So from the very first meeting of the young people with with Lindsay and the artists and Georgia. Troy and I met with the parents. We've had a mid-project meeting with them. We'll see them again at the end of the module in a really celebratory mood. They made some suggestions, and something that we'd thought about is whether we needed to offer a qualification or some kind of accreditation. The parents were very, very keen for that, so we've worked with them with that suggestion. For them, this evening's exhibition, there'll be a certificate, there'll be an opportunity to give their children a round of applause. So for many of our children or young people are school refusers, etc. So those meeting the needs of parents, supporting children with such complex stuff going on has been really important to mean that we've held on to almost every single person that started our project is still with us now, and I think that's really tremendous given what's going on for the young people, the families, and COVID, you know. So it's been great.
Can I ask a question about looked after children? I don't know who'd like to take this, but you know, often looked after children don't have families around them, or if they do, the families are temporary or not necessarily have that quality of commitment. How are you working with looked after children? Who'd like to take that? Lindsay.
Sure. Yes, I would say there are probably percentage of young people that are coming through looked after children's services or application routes is probably only about 20%. And in terms of trying to support those young people, we have been using, for example, we have youth mentors, seeing whether they can meet them at the door, whether there's any further support within the session. Some of the adapted materials, getting things sent out, working a little bit more with the system. But I will admit that that's one of the areas that I have my eye on. I think I'd need to check the exact rates, but I think that in terms of retention, it's not as good for young people that are in looked after settings. And that was the area I was talking about needing further resource probably for system support and being able to do more working and put a little bit more investment there with working with social workers and other support workers.
Which really takes me to the final question, which is around next steps and around how you might go about securing that funding. And I'm just very aware from right now, looking at the young people who are coming into the accident and emergency self-harming. We're seeing increased rates of young people now in that situation. Incredibly distressed, exactly the client group that you describe. Many of them are looked after or come from residential settings, and there is that need to begin to expand this work into those systems, bringing in health and social care. So I just wondered, what are the next steps as far as you're concerned?
I can start off with this one. So we're meeting in the new year to look for funding for like a type of summer project, which has more of an arts focus, supported by the psychology skills, of course, but slightly different focus, which will be focusing on the impact that COVID has had on a lot of these young people with mental health. And we hope that the young women from this cohort can go on and be peer mentors for that project and the future projects. But I can pass over to Vikki and Lindsay to answer the rest.
Vikki.
Yeah, so we're meeting with the development director at Brixton House in January to look at the possibility of Brixton House will be a brand new theatre, and it would be wonderful if year 1 and year 2 work together to perform something, to share something, to make their mark in a new building, in a new creative space. But then obviously we need to take we need to look for more sustained funding for a bigger, deeper project that really unpicks some of the learning that we've done in this 2-year project and looks at what the need is going forward. So that's something that obviously Lindsay and Troy will be very involved in, where it's really interesting you pointing out a gap that we haven't addressed. Look at what we have done well. So yeah, we're hoping to learn, to build on the next project from the success. and the learnings of this one.
We're now out of time, but you have been an absolutely stunning project. So I'm not by any means pointing out the weaknesses. We've ended on a high. Our broadcast series has truly been enriched by everything that you've brought. So I'd just like to thank you, Lindsay, Vikki and Georgia, for your presentation. And I really would encourage people to go and have a look at the presentation that you've got in Havel Street, and to get in touch with you via the website, and thank you for posting that in the mail base. Get in touch if you want to get in touch by leaving your names and addresses in the Q&A, and thank you.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.